3 o'clock now, 3:01. And we do have a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Do appreciate everyone's time here. But let's jump right into it. Valerie, do you want to take us to the financial update, project tracker?
Yes, absolutely. So as you can see on page 3 of your agendas, we do have a new fiscal year, so please don't fret. There are encumbrances that will be carried over. They just have not been updated yet. There's a process through finance that we've had to submit those for approval. So the funds have been replenished, all incentives have been replenished, but the encumbrances that have carried over from the last fiscal year just haven't been updated yet. So you see those balances as zero, that doesn't mean they're actually zero. So Dixieland happens to be replenished for the encumbrance, but downtown and midtown haven't been updated yet. So by next month, we anticipate having those updated for your record. And we also would like to work on updating the format of this a little bit. So next month, we're going to give you this format and plus a different format, so you can kind of see 2 different styles and kind of get your feedback on what you think might work better for just your analysis of what's going on in the budget and financials. And then with Project Tracker, everything's on track. I don't know if there's a specific project that you'd like to maybe ask about at this time for me or Shelley. If you've had a chance to look at those specific grant incentive programs or on the specific project sheet, page 4 and 5. I know there's a lot in there, but I like to give you guys a chance to ask if you have questions, a certain incentive or project.
How is the Gortwork building going?
Which building is that?
So that's the third from the bottom.
Second floor renovation or building.
I don't think that one is going in.
I know that the renovations have been on track, but I don't know where we are on our incentive side. We'll bring you an update next month. But TR Hillsborough, you're going to hear from today. So we'll make sure we bring you an update next month.
I have a question just to understand when the locations or when the projects are scratched off, does that mean they're completed or
Yes.
that they're done?
When there's a strike through, that means they're completed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Probably doesn't, not necessarily relate to the tracker, but it was a project we approved a little while back, but just happened to pass by a yard on Mass and saw that they had their artificial grass in and their covering and all that kind of stuff. I'm still a little concerned on whether they're going to make it or not, but
You want an
it looked
update?
good.
You want an update on their progress, and we can bring that back next month too.
Sure.
Okay. Because I know there was an additional set of improvements awarded by this group earlier this year.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about, where they asked for the artificial grass and the covering and something to do with drainage, and I think they got all that's done. I saw it a couple of days ago when I passed by.
Okay. We'll bring you an update.
Maybe we should take a field trip and go check it out.
Yeah, I like that idea. They would probably welcome the crowd.
Okay.
All right, let's go into housekeeping. So we have a few things to cover here. The board appointments.
Oh, yes. So we want to thank Frank Lansford for completing his second term. Actually, his term expires or concludes on November 6th. So this is, there's a two-term limit on the advisory board, and Frank has been with us for 6 years now. So we want to thank him. The cupcakes are here, and we wanted to just send him off right and say thank you for your years of service and for all the time you've spent at many advisory board meetings, retreats, and planning efforts and representing the CRA. So thank you. And
It's been fun.
so we appreciate it. But you have one more meeting to work on, so
Right.
don't
Do it.
get
Check out,
fast. So.
I like how we were able to sneak you in under the wire for one more meeting, you know?
One more meeting.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Timing is everything.
That's right.
So everybody get a cupcake. You don't have to eat them now. You can eat them before you head out, but we just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to Frank. And also to talk about the rest of the board appointments. We do have 2 vacancies still on Dixieland that we're working to look through applications. We've received quite a few through the last few months, so I'm talking with a couple of prospective applicants. And then with Frank's seat becoming available, we will have a Midtown seat available for that. So I'll be receiving applications. We already have some interested applicants from the Midtown area that I'll be talking to, but feel free to send some interested parties my way, because we can certainly talk with them and see if they'd be interested in joining the advisory board. They do have to live, work, or own property within the Midtown district, so those are the only criteria, and then we just talk with them and see what they're interested in doing. And they can't serve on another city municipal committee, so that's the only other criteria. So other than that, that's the boards and committees. Board retreat, I didn't get a chance to talk about this at the last meeting, but we are looking at what we normally have done with the advisory board is hold this in October, but since I'm brand new and I don't know anything, I was hoping to postpone that and hold it in January. We're looking at any of those 3 dates, the 5th, the 12th, or the 19th. They're all Thursdays, and hopefully if there's no urgent business, I'd like to do it in lieu of the regular meeting for a full day. And if your calendars will allow, we're trying to confirm a venue, make sure that we have lunch provided, and I do have a lot of ideas for that agenda, so I just wanted to put that up there for you all to check your calendars. If there is a major conflict, you can let me know.
I have a major conflict
Okay.
on January 14th, so the 5th I could do, I would not be able to do the 12th or the 9th.
Great, good to know. So we can accommodate.
So everybody has to be here on the 5th.
Yeah, so just everybody else make it work.
That or you.
Make it work.
Fine.
Make it work.
Make it work.
Okay, so you're doing Mondays,
Are those Mondays?
No, Thursday.
Thursday, 5th, January 2023.
January, okay, I'm looking at December, never mind.
I was gonna say, I'm still new, I don't know anything.
I already have CRA down there.
All right, good.
So it'll be all day.
All day on the 5th, if everyone can accommodate that day.
Yeah, but I think
At
it's
this moment, I can.
sure.
They're really town.
Wow, you guys are cool, thank you.
So when you say all day from 8 till or 9 till or?
5,
8 to
9 to
5.
5, yeah. We're working on venues and making sure we can secure a location that we can sit comfortably and be in one space all day.
All right.
All right. Last update is just the new CRA officers. We held interviews with LPD. Of course, it's a lateral transfer, so these are internal candidates. Of course, they have been endorsed, and they are working on scheduling and making sure that they are not leaving their positions vacant for any period of time, so they have to backfill or select new officers to fill their current positions so that they can then take over the schedule of the new CRA officers. So Officer Shuttler is here still, and we have Officer Halstead, who also works as CRA officer now. They will continue working in their current roles until that transition is fully scheduled. So I plan on having a more thorough update on their scheduling by December's meeting. But for now, the endorsement of the 4 officers are,
They're looking at shift change.
and the shifts will be
When we do
changing.
shift change, they're looking at, that's when they'll come over.
I'm sorry, what is?
Shift change, so basically we bid for shifts. We'll have the people coming off of training and stuff like that, so they'll be able to fill their roles on patrol, and then they'll be able to shift over to CRAs. So January.
January.
Okay.
So and that's why I was thinking by December I'd have more detail for you to know when their schedules would be. The 24-hour coverage will still be their schedule. We just don't know when that transition is fully going to take effect. But I know Captain Tarver was anxious to get that working, so you all would have a more thorough update. So thank you for that. Okay, so that's it. We'll now move on to regular business. I'm sorry, was the minutes in there too? We must have skipped right over that, so.
Well,
They're
it's
nice.
action items, that's our next section, so.
Yes.
All right, so action items and old business, we have our minutes here. If everyone would take a moment to review the minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion approved in a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Seeing none, minutes are approved. There we go. Which brings us to our new business. And so we're not hearing from Bain, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I can mention that Payne had a request, and because they had received a very recent update on their construction cost estimates, they wanted more time to evaluate what that would look like and what their potential grant request would be. So they requested to remove that request,
Okay.
withdraw their application at this time.
All right, so let's move on to the TR Hillsborough Downtown Infill Reuse Incentive.
All right, that's me. And many of you were in the room when we presented our initial request for funding as related to the second floor improvements. And I'm back today to say we've completed, at the time I'd spoken with Valerie last, it was 75%. Now all the block is through the roof on the elevator shaft, and we should be getting ready to put elevator equipment in the next couple of weeks. But the nature of our development project has changed since we had started to plan it, and just the way we negotiated leases, the tenants themselves are taking on the responsibility of the building improvements in exchange for free rent and discounted rental rates. And so I'm asking to modify the lease as a straight reimbursement on the elevator construction. And just to give you an idea of costs, we originally thought it was going to cost us about $180,000 total to put an elevator in. The shaft alone is going to cost us that much money, and then the elevator equipment which goes in it is additional. So, we had requested the grant thinking we were getting the lion's share of the elevator covered, and it's not even going to be close. We're going to be well over, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $280,000 total spent on an elevator, and that's just to get people to the second floor. And on the second floor, we've already leased 3,000 square feet to Randstad, which is an international firm. They're a staffing agency. And they've already designed their space. I've seen some preliminary budgets on what it's going to cost to build. They'll be spending upwards of $650,000 on just the 3,000 feet up there. And so then the remaining 1,500 square feet that we've got up there is going to cost probably another $300,000 to take from its current condition into something that we can lease. Then when you add the elevator expense, and then another expense which we didn't anticipate when we got into the job, this building's been vacant for so long that they had basically abandoned their electric connection. And the city took the power that used to feed our building, and it now powers the trash compactor. So I can't even get electricians that are certain on how much money it's going to cost to get electric to the building. They're not sure how they're going to access it. They're looking into manhole runs to get electricity from the nearest transformer to the building. So that's going to be an unknown, but another significant expense. So all in, between us and our tenants, with the elevator and the second floor improvements, we're probably going to be at or near that $150,000, or that $1.5 million total spend. But we were just trying to convert this because we won't have the checkbooks of the tenants that are investing into it, and we won't be able to show you, all the bids. We were just looking to convert it back to a flat dollar amount based on a reimbursement of the elevator installation.
So to just explain the reason for the ask or the clarification is our grant program requires that the applicant comes in with their reimbursement request and shows proof of all of the improvements paid, and it has to be paid by the applicant or the person requesting the reimbursement. Because of the nature of the lease arrangements, there's improvements being made by the tenants and there's improvements being made by the property owner. So because the advisory board approved the grant of 10% of the total project cost up to $150,000, we wanted to make sure that you were aware and you could have the opportunity to clarify that this could be a total dollar amount of $150,000 towards the elevator and second floor improvements, which is giving access for these tenants to be open on the second floor of this building. So that's the premise for the request, and make sure you have the opportunity to clarify.
Okay, any questions?
I think I made a comment about are you sure that's all it's going to cost?
Yeah.
The elevator?
Every time I,
Oh, you did, remember? Yeah, I did.
and you were right, I should have listened.
Okay, so just so I'm understanding as well, the clarification is just kind of simplifying this a little bit and saying we're okay with contributing $150,000, however that works out.
Towards the cost of the elevator, yes. So when we're done with the elevator, we'll give you our, permit completion, our certificate of occupancy or certificate of completion for the elevator, lien waivers, everything that's required. But I just won't be able to get all that information on the other second floor improvements. But it will far exceed the $150,000 on that alone.
Okay.
And that's a staff recommendation, is that,
It's consistent with what the intent of the program is, which is giving access to the second floor and activating the use of the second floor.
Okay. So if we don't have any further questions, I'll hear a motion.
a motion to approve the request?
Okay. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's take to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion passes.
Thank you all so much. And if any of you want to go see what an elevator shaft looks like, I'm glad to open the building up and get you inside. I hope you all have a great afternoon. It was fun being back in the room. I missed sitting around the table with you guys.
All right. So next, we've got a few discussion items. Brian, you want to walk us through that?
Yes, so in front of you, you all should have a copy of what should look like CRA letterhead. You have a few other copies, I'll talk about those in just a minute, but this draft is the South Florida Avenue endorsement letter that you all recommended staff write and prepare for you for consideration. This is a combination of a few items, and I did share it internally with the Community Economic Development team just to make sure my facts and numbers were right, just for your consideration as an endorsement letter of the permanent configuration of South Florida Avenue, as well as endorsing the strategic master plan prepared by Ayers and Associates. We don't have to get too technical into wordsmithing, but if you feel comfortable with the content and the endorsement, we can certainly have your favorable consideration for the chair to sign, and it can be prepared for the city commission.
So when it says permanent configuration, that means permanent in, as far as the design to come up with the best option, but to keep it 2 lanes? Is that what we're saying?
To keep it the road diet. It's the 2 lanes in each direction with the turn lane in the middle, and then figuring out the configuration based on the options that were laid out before.
This option 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Figure out which one's the best, and that's.
So we're not endorsing a configuration, we're endorsing the project as a whole to continue to move forward as a permanent decision in that corridor.
Yes.
Yeah, that part threw me off because based on what they gave the last time, we're still trying to figure out what will be permanent versus a permanent plan in place already.
Right. So the road diet test is just the concrete barriers and just analyzing the data based on the removing those 2 additional lanes on each direction of travel.
Moving the barriers, but it ultimately will be 2 lanes.
Correct.
In some way, shape, or form.
Correct. So this just endorses that, keeping it in that permanent configuration, but continuing to evaluate the master plan document and looking at those viable options of that permanent configuration going forward.
All right. So how do we feel about it? Yeah, okay.
I think that's the sentiment of our conversation from last.
Yeah, and yes,
Mr. Chair, just want to let you know that Commissioner Reed is here, and he did ask me if he could have a comment on this item at some point, whenever, at your discretion, whenever you'd like to entertain that.
and Commissioner, I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. I normally don't come to your meetings, but I do enjoy it, and I read the information quite because I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Regardless of my personal opinion of what's going to happen on the diet today, over the past several meetings, I've encouraged, if I think it's going to pass, regardless of what I think or not. And I think if it does pass, it will be a good thing. But I think, and I've called the City Commission, for it to really to take effect, the CRA or the Dixieland Homeowner Association need to get behind it. I think from Ariana to West Highland Street needs to be rezoned commercial to make room for offices, bread and breakfast, those type of entities from that area, from Ariana to New York, to Ariana as far north as West Highlands needs to be zoned commercial. So we could take out some buildings, make offices, bread and breakfast, and little restaurants, kind of like you see in Hyde Park. I go to Martha's Vineyard all the time. There's little stations just like that. But to really improve that area, you have to do a massive zoning change. And I've asked the city, and it's going to take somebody to get a hold of the neighborhood and drive this. And I would just like to see if the CRA, that's your position, y'all need to get behind it and do something like that to see, because I don't think the area is going to thrive unless there's some massive zoning changes and readily more available of parking.
You say
so I encourage y'all to do that.
You mean going south?
You're going to start at West Highlands and go as far south as Ariana and go as far west as New York, and starting at Florida Avenue. It's just a little, probably a 75 home, but there's got to be more parking there to make it walkability and not to open it up to do stuff with the landscape and stuff like that. That's just my thoughts, but I think it would behoove the CRA or the Dixieland Homeowner Association to get this. Somebody's got to drive it. I haven't been able to make one of the Dixieland Homeowner Association meetings yet. But I've been meaning to, but every time they've been canceled or I'm out of town or something, but this may be the best place to start. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Highland is, that's what I was just doing, is pulling up on my phone just to refresh my memory. I think it's, Commissioner, I appreciate your point there. I think that's very interesting and
If you would have carried a little further north, you could, but Ariana seems the most logical spot to start. Stop to the south.
If I can add, I think that's very interesting. I don't know how to pursue that proposal at this table because the CRA boundary is pretty narrow onto the corridor. But if this committee wanted to offer an opinion on just the CRA boundary at this time and then evaluate a zoning recommendation, or at least evaluate that, we could certainly take it back to the planning staff and talk about, how do we frame that as a recommendation? Because there'd be a lot of planning to go into how the city would initiate a zoning action to that scale and size. And then within the CRA's boundaries, of course, there's going to be some limit to how much we could recommend and then how much the Dixieland Homeowners Association Neighborhood Association would have to weigh in on that. But that is an interesting concept to consider.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around
Just that
section. So if I could see it in a map or something, and I can see it on my phone map, but in relation to the whole big picture.
Highland.
Yeah, I found it there. It's just hard to see it.
Dixieland Relics is where Dixieland Relics is, and then obviously Ariana. There are quite a few multifamily and single-family homes in that block right now, so I think that would just need a little bit certainly need quite a bit of research, see what's appropriate. But I think the gist of the idea makes a lot of sense.
Well, I don't know that it affects the letter now, but I do think that a consideration of the zoning is the point that you're making, Commissioner, is how this permanence is going to impact that area specifically. So at what point, Valerie, would zoning changes become a part of our discussion?
It's a very important discussion within the strategic master plan. I think that's part of the policy element. If we move forward with a permanent configuration, there's the first thing that everyone would focus on is construction, and when is DOT going to start planning and designing the road, the permanent configuration, and then we would be evaluating policy implementation, supporting strategies to help complement the new road configuration, and we would look at land development code changes and how we can support the corridor. So that would be a component of that discussion, I think. And we could certainly evaluate what is the zoning category. Would there be an overlay district that just applies to this entire one block grid surrounding South Florida Avenue? And I think this would be something to consider. So.
Thank you. There's already some O1 zoning on the west side of New York around 100th Street. So some of those areas already got some type of commercial zoning, but it wouldn't really be real.
Yeah, there's a spattering of like commercial along New York, and
Missouri too, right?
yeah, and there's some
If you go north up to Crescent Street, those areas are already commercial up that way. And if you want to go further north, I just took some arbitrary property street names.
Sure.
You wouldn't go beyond Lenox to the south, and I don't think you'd go much beyond Palmetto to the north, in my opinion. But
yeah, it's an evolving area, and as things change, and I think it's important for the city, and to be quite frank, Commissioner, I'm not sure which department is really should spearhead the research of this. I think it's probably a collaborative effort, but it definitely makes sense to continue to evaluate and research as things evolve and change. So I'm glad you brought it up, because I think it does need to be something that everyone's
I've got 1 year left, so I can help you. I'll do all I can to help you.
Well, it reminds me of conversations that I had years and years ago. Johnny Finkbeiner is a photographer on Missouri, and I know that there's been a lot of challenges for her to get to the commercial side of where she is to have that business there. So she was kind of like a trendsetter, or she spearheaded a lot of that change, the ordinance changes or the zone changes. So maybe it's a conversation, a community conversation with those either residences or already existing businesses that we start with and just go, how do you want to see this area grow as we're impacting South Florida Avenue to you? It's going to impact you. So maybe it's just to start with the conversations to have that documented and on the record. Does that make sense?
Out of curiosity, what happens when you rezone? If somebody's residential in a zone that is now going to be commercial, what happens? Are they pushed out, or do they get grandfathered in until they sell the property?
From my point of view, this is his question. I have my opinion, but
And I'm just generally, I'm not trying to get
It depends really how you do it. I mean, you can phase out uses that by rezoning and not allowing them to grandfather in, but that certainly creates some legal issues that you're essentially taking away a property right. The Constitution requires compensation whenever you take property away from people. So there's really not an easy way to answer the question. Obviously, from a legal perspective, having the support of the property owner to accept the new zoning is the most ideal, but the city can initiate zoning without every property owner approving it. It's a little bit more complicated process. There's stricter requirements in the statute on how we engage that process, and we would most likely grandfather in something to avoid the takings issue. You can do what they call amortization, where you can phase out a use over time, which is intended to allow people to still achieve the investment-backed expectation in their property right, but then eventually have everything conform to the new zoning. You can grandfather in certain elements and not others. There's a lot of different ways to approach it to respect the property right, but ultimately, you're right. If somebody doesn't want it, then that could create issues for the city, potentially litigation.
And then that supports what you were just saying, then, Chris Ann, is that starting with the neighborhoods and seeing where their heads are at.
Public engagement.
That's what kind of made that whole Dixie, that commercial strip so unique, because you really just have that strip, because one block over either side you have entrenched residential that has been there. I mean, from way back from when I was a kid going through that area, so it's kind of awkward to envision doing that.
So was the road diet before.
Well, but the road diet, I mean, that was what always had been. And it was like, for me, it was just designed there was no vision for that area to expand, because as I've driven around some other roads that are, commercial, medical, and how they're always wide. If you look at Lakeland Hills or you look at Massachusetts, they were set up to have that commercial, even the area where the tax collector's office is. That was old Publix or Winn-Dixie at one time. So you had the traffic going through there. But just that one area through Dixieland was like, no, we never think this is gonna, it was never built to be any wider, and never any expectations for a large flow of traffic coming through there.
Okay, I would like to get back to what we have here. So are we all in favor of moving forward with this endorsement?
I make a motion that we move forward.
All right. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Guess I get to put my name on this.
Oh, that's a draft.
That's a draft.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, thank God. Oh, no.
She has to do it.
You can keep the
Mr. Chair, could I have maybe clarification on what happens with the letter next? Is this going to be transmitted to the city commission in some formal way? Is that the expectation, or?
I will likely provide it to Tracy or Carol in the city manager's office to be packaged and distributed.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah. And just for everyone's knowledge, they are the assistants to the commissioners, and they will distribute. I don't know if it will be packaged in their agenda for that workshop or if it will be distributed individually, because I know there are other agencies and boards that are considering similar endorsements, but since this is an official city committee, CRA, of course, having a standing in the Dixieland corridor and South Florida corridor, they will probably distribute it as soon as they receive it.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right. Last thing here, we've got the neighborhood association or the upcoming events. You want to go over that?
Yes, but before I do, I had one item that actually Terry had brought to my attention, and it was just to clarify. I thought we may have to discuss for a potential motion, but we did find out that you all had considered the Friends of Freedom Monument funding earlier this summer, and we did have a little bit of discrepancy on the contribution from Lakeland Electric, but we did work that out. So the CRA has submitted its contribution to the Friends of Freedom in the amount of $14,502.99, I think, and Lakeland Electric's $10,000 contribution has been submitted very recently. It's within the last week or so. So it was delayed. There was a bit of confusion on that, but we did get it worked out. So with that, the event that I failed to include on the agenda is the upcoming luncheon that's going to be held on Saturday, November 12th. And if any of you would like to attend, please let us know and we can arrange for your tickets for the lunch. The monument has been delivered, so it is there in Freedom Park.
It's covered now. I
It's
passed by
covered.
there this morning. So
But just to know it's there is kind of cool. I was not able to witness the delivery, but I saw some pictures, so it's pretty awesome. So just forgot to include that in the agenda cover, but going on to the upcoming events, I did want to put up there for your notes that the Neighborhood Association Coalition meeting is this evening in City Hall in the Commission Chambers. So if any of you are interested, want to kind of attend or participate, that's always a good meeting. At 6 o'clock this evening, the Friends of Freedom Veterans Day Luncheon is on the 12th, and then the City Commission DOT Workshop on South Florida Avenue will be on December 2nd. So it'll be the day after your next regular meeting, but it will be in this room, so it'll be a tight fit. If you can, I would suggest watching it live stream, so I can send you the link to do that. Should be a good meeting.
and it's in here, but the unveiling of the monument will actually be at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, and followed by the Veterans Day Parade.
Thank you.
All right,
And
great.
that's all I had.
And then we did have the FRA conference, and I wanted to thank Terry and Chrisanne for going to that. Unfortunately, I with the flu and had to miss it. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to share any of your big aha moments, big takeaways from going to the conference. And Valerie, same for you. Same for you. So.
Yes. Well, I'd like to hear from Terry and Chrisanne. I know we've shared a lot of notes in between sessions, but Shelley and I shared a lot of notes afterwards. I'm anxiously awaiting for the conference presentations to be ready so that I can download and share those with you all as well. But after you.
Ladies first.
You first. You first.
There was a lot of good information, and there's a gentleman, well, I guess he was Valerie's replacement over in Tampa now, who came from Palmetto, and he led a training session that Chrisanne and I sat in on, and he went through the Florida statutes and all this kind of stuff, and kind of the first order of a CRA, so what you look at, slum, blight, and then development based on that slum blight areas. And he really talked about knowing your plan, following your plan. If it's not in your plan, you can't do it. And it kind of dawned on me, okay, have I seen that plan? And I'm sure Val will probably go through that maybe at retreat or at some point in time. Update the plan every 7 years, must match comprehensive plan. And maybe one thing that I may have been confused on or wasn't sure on was our board is actually the advisory board to the city commission that wears multiple hats as the actual CRA, the CRA for the city. And I've been at city commission meetings where they can terminate one meeting and reconvene as a CRA or zoning and those kind of things. And I just have some notes down here, something came up about tourist areas and identifying different areas as a tourist area. So my question to myself was, has Bonnet Springs Park, has it been designated as a tourist area? Will it be, should it be? I know it's part of the Midtown CRA now. Mm-hmm. And there was something about if you have an area that's designated inside a CRA as a tourist area, I guess there's some type of benefits that go along with that. So, I don't know if you could research that.
Sure can.
Okay. And CRA money separate and distinct from governing body that created it. And I guess that was one question about if your CRA is not really separated from your commission board. There's, I guess, in some areas, municipalities, the CRA money can tend to get blended in if you don't have a good watchdog or gatekeeper to keep that from happening. Tampa has 8 CRA areas compared to our 3 CRA areas. Some areas have a separate CRA attorney versus the city attorney doing that kind of information. Independent CRAs versus department under the city. Life of the CRA.
Yeah.
And I had this discussion with Valerie on the life term of the different CRAs, and they mentioned that any CRA that was created before 2002 has a 30-year life with a possible 30-year extension. If it was created after 2002, then that CRA has a 40-year lifespan, and then that's the end of it. But I guess for, was it Midtown and Downtown, those two CRAs never got an extension, so unless something happens, they expire, was it 2031? So, and since that came up, we had that discussion on the lifespan. Just never fund 100% of CRA police officer salary, which I guess we did. It was mentioned that you could possibly have a code enforcement person on your CRA, kind of to keep you up to speed on the different things that they see. And there is a special presentation from a lawyer from St. Petersburg that made a presentation on how they had a problem with, what was inherited property?
Yes.
Where you have family members and maybe a house had been abandoned or something like that, and they were trying to figure out who it went to. So that there was a particular code enforcement officer that kind of came up with a plan working with families in the neighborhood on how to be able to process that land or that property. So it's not just sitting there and there's a constant code problem. And I'm not sure that's a problem we have here, but just based on what people from other cities said, that they have that problem.
All right.
Can we go back to the never fund 100% of the police officer?
Because if an emergency breaks out and you're paying them to spend their time in the CRA, well, they're going to leave to handle whatever emergency that's going on. Well, now they're outside of your CRA and they're doing other police work, and you're basically paying them for that.
So it's not considered.
Okay.
They have best practices, and there's community-oriented policing, which is a CRA-funded or CRA best practice. And so that's what our officers are intended to do, community-oriented policing, which is what the entire NLO unit, that's what they all do. It's just they go out into all neighborhoods across the city, and that's what the CRA officers' job descriptions mirror are the NLO unit job descriptions. So it's a little gray area. When you hear it at a conference, you're like, we shouldn't pay for any officers, but in our case, we're doing what the neighborhood liaison unit officers do. It's just we're paying them to be providing us that coverage within our CRAs. So they're going to be working alongside the NLOs, doing a lot of the same work.
I think their recommendation was only up to, was it 75%?
Something like that.
Something in that neighborhood. And then it was do a market study of the CRA area. You know, have we done or had a current market study of our CRAs? And so, and I just wrote down what projects are the Lakeland CRA working on. After a bunch of different presentations, I felt for the year that I've been here, we've kind of been a rubber stamp agency for higher level projects that didn't fall in the slum and blight area for improvement. So, you know, I feel like that's something we need to look at. And I spoke to Valerie about the George Jenkins corridor, where tons of stuff, you know, the last meeting, the guy talked about the North Lake Wire area and the project there. And then you also have the Florida Tile area. Well, just across on the north side of George Jenkins, starting from Massachusetts going west, you have a whole strip of CRA property that's no development is being done. You know, we voted on, and shortly after I came on the board.
What's happened is there's been a lot of attention towards reducing the slum and blight by the CRA acquiring property with the intent to have an opportunity for it to be developed. So it's kind of like what happened with where Muirton is. You know, that was a blighted area, and then in 2005, the CRA accumulated that property. Unfortunately, it was bad market timing, and so it didn't get developed for a long time. But when the market conditions were correct, that's when we were able to attract a developer to come out and do that. So it is multiple stages. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind. It's like, you know, there's been a lot of work done in the previous decades on addressing slum and blight, and now so we do have more opportunity to work on the redevelopment aspect of to work more on that pillar of the CRA. So,
well, and I understand that. You know, again, I've only been here a year,
there's certainly other areas that do deserve our attention in addressing blight and stuff like that. So,
well, that's the kind of hot area in the city now.
Yeah.
And on the south side of Georgia, you know, we've had developers that are coming to us. So since that's a hot area going into the Bonnet Springs area, you know, it would appear that the time is right to ask for that market study and say, what can we do with this to go along in conjunction with stuff that's going to happen on the south side and to the west of that. So from Massachusetts to Kathleen Road area, you know, that if you can build that up, then, you know, you have stuff on both sides of George Jenkins going west. So, but, you know, it's just another one of those things, you know, you bring somebody in and do the study and let them tell you what to do. And I know that had kind of been in place at one time, but it looked like it came to a standstill.
All right. Christine, what were your big takeaways?
Okay, so I had some time to gather my thoughts. Terry mentioned the CRA board training. That's kind of how it all began, and Jeff Burton was the trainer there. And for me, it was something I thought we should have as a board, like almost like a virtual or a recording, or have Jeff Burton come, and that was a conversation that I had with Valerie. But then it turned into realizing that a bunch of the people that were attending that CRA conference were also Polk County CRA staff members from Bartow, from Lake Wales, from Auburndale, from other areas. And so I positioned the idea of potentially having a group of CRA board members or others that are kind of new to the game to understand. Because I think for the first year, I think all of us came on around the same time. Teresa, TJ, and I, and you were a couple of months behind, but it was kind of like, I don't understand enough. I think I was given like a thumb drive and a lot of information all at once, and it was like, okay, this is what your role is as a CRA board member. But I have like 6 or 7 pages of notes that I took just in Jeff Burton's training that were like aha moments that I think Terry and I were like looking at each other just going, whoa, mind blown. So my thought was if we could start to think about what that might look like as far as helping us be better educated and better stewards of the roles that we're playing, so we know a little bit more contextually and what we should and shouldn't be doing, so that we can feel like we're making decisions, sound decisions, when they come ahead of us. So that was my big beginning takeaway. I really did enjoy seeing all of those other people from around Polk County. I've always been a person believing that there's a lot of overlap. Like, a lot of people are doing a lot of work in their communities or in their areas, that should we have an opportunity to coordinate efforts or collaborate, we won't be necessarily spinning our wheels. There was a presentation that the Lake Wales CRA staff member gave us about some projects that they were doing in Lake Wales, where he had attended the conference. He was new to his position. He had attended the conference the year before, met a woman that I don't remember what her organization was, but the federal financing, that not the FDIC, but the other organization. And she became a partner for him to help gather banks and get them on because she is who she is. All of the banks were like, oh, you're going to have her on the call? We'll be there. And so the banks were all there for this project to start to take shape. And I was just like, that's the kind of thing that I would love to know. We can see opportunities coming around for some of the projects that we have that we would like to see. I think a lot of times where the projects are coming to us, I would like for us to kind of look at ideally what we would like those areas to look like, or how we could grow our slum and blight or deteriorating areas. So that was my takeaway from there. And then I learned about an organization. I was surprised you didn't bring it up. A type of organization.
You started talking about it. Yeah.
A community development corporation is an organization that can be created. It's a nonprofit 501c3 organization that can be created alongside CRAs to allow them to have the ability to do things that the statutes will not allow. So we sat through an entire presentation where basically it was just being hammered home. You cannot use CRA dollars for events and marketing. And so, of course, I was in the marketing meeting because I wanted to know what we could do, but basically what it was is, these are the things you can do. This is how you could potentially use some CRA dollars for things that are appropriate within the statutes. But then in the next meeting, we learned that I don't think the CRA has to be the end-all and be-all of these areas. We need additional partners and additional organizations. And right now, according to our conversation, there are no CDCs aligning with the goals of the CRA. Am I accurate?
The Lakeland,
Lakeland,
yeah.
correct.
And most of the other groups or cities we met and talked with, most had CDCs as that they partnered with, which I guess helped them get things done. In fact, I think Valerie and I and Shelley sat in on presentation from, was it East Tampa, the University, USF area, and then a lady from, was it Riviera Beach? Yeah, gave outstanding presentation. In fact, they had, I guess it was through their CDC had hired, or maybe it was the CRA that had hired what they call ambassadors to kind of do some of the same thing. They worked collaborative with the police department, and they actually had them on salary. And I guess their top guy was making about $50,000 a year, and in all areas had, some issues with homeless. In fact, the lady from Riviera Beach, she used the term the unhoused versus homeless because transient or unhoused, because some had choices and some didn't have choices. So they really wanted to work with people that didn't have a choice. They just didn't have other options. So those are the people that they were really trying to help. And she even said some of them, that's just the life they want to live. But it's an issue.
Well, and speaking about the challenges of education, like if we have people who are living in an area that we're wanting to bring up or lift up into a better condition, for example, having opportunities for financial literacy education. That's not a CRA role. That would be a role of an organization that is looking at what are the goals of the CRA, how can we make these goals also supported through what we can do as a nonprofit versus what the CRA can do. So it just seemed like a conversation that was just waiting to happen of what would it look like? Should there be a nonprofit that was dedicated towards this kind of conversation? Because I felt like I was at home with these community redevelopment people. Like that was like the soul of that conversation was in, a rising tide lifts all ships. And so every conversation was uplifting and about opportunity and possibility. And I just left feeling like, okay, I want to go conquer the world. And I really enjoyed having the opportunity. So I would say, and I think Brandon came back last year and said, I really hope that you guys will go, because he had come back kind of probably feeling the same way when he went.
Absolutely. It was eye-opening just to see. It was you learn so much and you gain a lot of tools. Mm-hmm. And this is we put in a few hours a month, but there's people who dedicate their lives to this, and it's like there's so much we can learn. And to me the big thing is I think on the agenda they put everyone's term limits on here, and like I've got another year and a half, and then but that'll be the end of my second term. But everyone else, Frank is last meeting today. Everyone else is on their first term, so I think it's a really great opportunity to have to prepare you all to be the best you can on this board for as long as you're on here. You have a lot of opportunity to have a huge impact. And it's difficult to wrap your head around, because it's a complex and it's a deep industry. Again, we've spent a few hours a month doing this. But there's so much to learn. So.
And there's one other presentation that really kind of stuck out. A guy did a presentation, U.S. hunger, and he mentioned something that really stuck out to me because I'd heard the term food desert, and I kind of identified the area on the northwest side. There's a food desert, but then he said, if it's a food desert, it's a desert. And it's not, if it's a food desert, it's also a job desert, a medical desert, a dental desert. It's just missing everything.
Yeah.
So he said, you have to look at it more from a broader approach than just, okay, they don't have access to a Publix grocery store. Well, probably if they don't have access to a Publix grocery store, they don't have access to a CVS, they don't have access to a Walgreens, they don't have access to fresh vegetables, any of that. So you can't just look at it as a food desert. You have to look at it from a larger perspective. And then he had this real neat computer program where he could put in a zip code, a touch on a particular area, and it showed the percentage of the number of people that were below the poverty area, and the number of people in that area that they had sent food packages to. So, I thought that was pretty neat.
That was a beautiful program that it reminded me of like Blue Apron, the meal prep, you get the box, it sits on your door, and you get, whatever it is for the week that you're going to cook or make or prepare. But there's an anonymity to that versus going to a food pantry and needing to ask for help. And so it kind of spiffed up the whole experience of needing to have food in the home, but it's healthy food, it's vegetables, the expensive things that are really hard to come by, when you're on a fixed budget. And then they had the ability using that data, and that's what I always say, it's like the data-driven decisions that are being made about, the decisions that are being made without the data to support them. This was really being able to look on a map and say, okay, this is how many boxes of food we've delivered in this community. So this means that there's your food desert. I mean, we kind of know, like, these are the areas that are needing the most, support. But when you have the numbers to support it, that's when you get access to the grant monies. That's when you get access to other things that, anecdotally we can share. We know we have a problem, but when you have the data to support it, and that was just a beautiful example of how data was driving those decisions and making those opportunities available. So all in all, as you can tell, I was a big fan. I really enjoyed it, and I have a lot more thoughts, but I just thought I'd give you kind of the nuggets that I took away.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for going. I do appreciate that. And Valerie, yes, thank you for going and allowing us to
And we won an award. We haven't talked about that.
You won an award?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I apologize. We received the annual report award from the Florida Redevelopment Association, and this week they've been releasing all of the photos from the award ceremony, so I will share with you all so you can see the award.
That's awesome.
When did you get to go in front of the commission with your prize?
I don't know.
Ladies have.
City Commission meeting Monday.
Yeah.
Do we have a trophy here?
There's a plaque.
Beautiful
yes.
Come on, you bring the hardware out
I
here?
know.
We gotta, we should have goggles and tarps and champagne bottles.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I just
Yes,
want
sir.
if I could make a comment, just on some of the comments there, that I want to let you all know that I'm an available resource to you for anything. If I don't know the answer, I'm happy to research and get you answers on any of the, if you have an idea that's something you'd like the CRA to do or interested in or whatever, I'm here for you. That's what one of my job duties. So just want to, that obviously implied by my presence here, but just want to explicitly say that so that you know. Feel free to call me, email me. I'm available to you, and just as Valerie and her staff as well. But just want to
Jason, you better
give
warn
you
him.
the invitation.
Well, that's absolutely true, Jared, because in every one of our sessions, they say, whatever their best practices are, but contact your attorney to confirm. And that's what every FRA speaker says with resounding clarity. Contact your attorney to confirm.
Particularly if you have an ethical question. I mean, that's like the best thing that I can give to someone is I can give you that protection of, if you have an ethical question, I can give you an opinion on it, and then that's something you can rely on, and it gives you that protection, that kind of insurance that you did rely on your advice of counsel. That's one of the only things of benefit that I can give to people.
You have a great personality too. I mean, come on. Don't
Is
sell
this
yourself
limited
short.
to CRA
I got
things?
jokes.
Can I send you like fantasy football trade evaluations too? Like where?
Those I cannot insure, but I did also have a comment on the project tracker. I noticed that the Oak Street RFP was still listed as in negotiation. I'll just give you the update that they have, their inspection period has expired.
Okay.
They invoked all the extensions that were available to them, and they're done, so they're locked in, and it's just a matter of lining up all those closing conditions that we built in. I haven't seen a formal permit submittal. I don't know if you all
I
have
have
yet.
a meeting scheduled with them. I was hoping to have a more formal update for the group, but
The next hard deadline in the contract is May 9 of next year, which is when the closing needs, the closing needs to occur before that date. So they've got to get all the conditions lined up before then. Otherwise, inspection period has expired, so we're locked in on that deal.
All right, that's good. Well, that looks like it's it for our agenda. Thank you all for coming today. It was a light agenda, and we added some extra stuff in here, but I think it was worthwhile. And Frank, I'll give you one last round of applause. Thank you for your time here. All right, meeting's adjourned.
Carlos has something.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, no, the whole idea when we went to the Edgewater Beach, this is going to create a whole economic explosion.
So, okay, we'll just keep that.
Nobody's going to.
This happens for us every year. Yeah.